Well, good evening and welcome to the Brothers-in-law. Those of you who are first-time viewers of our show, we're the Brothers-in-law. I'm Corey, and my co-host tonight is Mr. Michael Bradley. And Mike and I are both former law enforcement police officer. I was a Virginia State Trooper for 7 years, and Mike is a retired police officer out of Pleasanton, California. And we're on here because we talk about police involved shootings that take place throughout the country. And if you've watched any of our videos in the past, you'll see that Mike and I give our honest opinion about those shootings, whether they were justifiable or not. And what we look for is whether or not this is what a reasonable officer would do. So we give our analysis on that. And so that's why we're here, because we're trying to get people to see these shootings from a different perspective, I should say. So we thank you all for joining us. If this is your first time joining us tonight, those of you who've been here before know how Mike and I are. Some of you are going to like what we say. Others of you are not going to like what we had to say. But at the end of the day, we can at least respect each other's points of views of these police involved shootings. And this is also the reason why we've come up with the acronym of C.A.L.M. And C.A.L.M stands for comply, answer questions, listen, and move on. Basically, no matter what type of officer you get, if you do these things, you're staying calm, you're answering their questions, you're listening to what they're telling you to do, you're going to be able to move on. Now, you may go to jail depending on what the situation is, but at least you're still alive, right? Because when you're staying calm, you're going to make it harder for that officer to do something stupid. They may try. You may get that one asshole that wants to give you trouble. But if you're doing those things, you're making it hard. The end of the game is whether you're wrongfully arrested or you get a citation, or we call them summonses here, you're able to move on and you're able to take legal actions to rectify that problem so it doesn't happen to you again or to anybody else. Mike, you got anything to add to that?
No, just welcome everybody to the show. I see you, Stacy. I see you, Tone. I see you, Megan. I see you, Katrina. Appreciate you guys joining us. And like Corey was saying, we're going to give you our opinion from an officer's perspective if we were on that particular call. We try to keep race out of it. And the reason why we do that is because we want to look at the actions of these officers, that if it was me having that call for service or involved in that. And obviously, Corey and race don't play into it at all of how we would handle a call for service. You see what I'm saying? So we do that on purpose because we want to give you honest view of whether or not we would have done what was done in this particular call, no matter what race you are. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we specifically eliminate that aspect when we talk about these calls for service. Now, does race play a role in some of these officers' minds in some of these calls for service? I don't know, possibly, but that's not the viewpoint Corey and I are giving you. We're giving it to you without that aspect involved, and you know that you can be sure that we don't care what race you are. We don't care if you black, white, purple, red, or green. We still gonna give you the same opinion of whether or not we would handle this call. Now we're gonna jump right into it, Corey, because this is definitely a hot spot. The Akron shooting, Jayland Walker, it is. About 90 shots fired at this young man. Unfortunately, he lost his life. We're gonna tell you about it and what we would have done, what we wouldn't have done. Corey and I might share the same views. We might have different views from each other. That just goes to show you that, incidents like these, it's kind of like trying to determine what you would do in a fight, what each individual would do in a fight, and trying to dictate how they would respond. You should have thrown a left versus a right or something like that. Right. You see what I'm saying? So yeah. We're going to get into it and look at this video. and give your honest opinion. And please feel free to make comments, questions, or anything like that. We love to tackle them or hear what you have to say about these things. You know.
Hey,
Can you
what's
feel
good,
better?
Seiko? What's good? Good seeing you on here. Hey, so yeah, like Mike said, we're gonna jump right into this. Go ahead before we do, like, hit that like, share, and subscribe button for us. If this is your first time checking us out here on the Brothers-in-law. So, as you know, this is what talking about the Jayland Walker shooting. 90 shots fired, 60 allegedly hit the young man, ultimately killing him. There were 8 officers involved. From what I've read, it was seven of those officers were white, 1 was black. We're also going to remind you that this is a graphic video. In this video, it's about 4 minutes and 35 seconds long. It's a snippet of each of the officers' body cam footage. So we'll take a look at that. But like Mike said, let's leave race out of it. Let's look at what was wrong. What was wrong and what could have been done differently. Because these things should not have to happen. And this is why, again, like I said earlier in the opening, you know, we preach the C.A.L.M acronym: comply, answering questions, listen, and move on. Now, there's a lot to this story. There's a lot that's going to keep coming out about it. But just keep those things in mind as we go through this video, and Mike and I will give you our honest analysis on it. You may agree with us and you may disagree, but it is what it is. And here we go. I'm gonna set it up here.
All right.
Get my screen back. And again, remember, this is a very graphic video, so be warned.
He's slowing down here, slowing down. Stop. It's your fucking head. It's your fucking head. Don't you fucking move the car. You fucking move. Hey, don't fucking move. Don't fucking move. Show me your hand. Show me your fucking hand.
And this is another officer body cam.
Kind of free. Is it freeze framing on your end?
No, is it freezing on you?
Yeah, it's freezing on me. I don't know if our viewers see that freezing that I see or not, but bear with us,
Okay.
folks. I know people have seen these videos 100 times on YouTube.
Yeah. I'm not gonna run through every last one of these videos, cameras, because it is graphic. Yeah, Seiko, he did. See, at that point, it's hard to see, but at that point, he made some type of gesture like he turned around. All right. So I'm going to stop it right there, Mike, because like I said, it is graphic, and I don't want to raise any red flags with YouTube on this. Okay. But so let's start at the very beginning. Why were they in pursuit with this young man? Well, the articles that I read, that it was a traffic stop violation for whatever reason. I don't know if he ran a stop sign or busted tail light, expired registration. We don't know, other than it was a traffic violation.
And
let me just
go ahead.
Before I lose my train of thought.
Go ahead.
So as a state police officer, when I hit those lights for whatever reason, and you don't stop, and I usually for me, if you don't stop within a mile, I say, okay, I'm calling out a pursuit, right? When you call out the pursuit, that's letting everybody else know, hey, what you got going on, where you are, what the road traffic conditions are, etc. And we're going. you're not stopping. Now, that whatever the reason was that I was for that traffic stop, now it goes on the back burner. Now I'm dealing with what we would call, now it's going to be called a felony stop. You're eluding the police right now. Now, in that, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. You could be going 20 miles an hour. You are failing to yield to law enforcement. You're failing to stop, right? It doesn't matter 20 miles an hour or you going 120 miles an hour. Doesn't matter. You're not stopping. Now my heightened of awareness and situation awareness is going up. Now I'm trying to figure out, well, why isn't he or she stopping? Did they just kill somebody? Did somebody get robbed? What happened? You're not stopping. A normal, reasonable person sees the lights, is going to pull over to wherever they deem necessary, safe, or the officer stops and moves them to where that officer wants them to be. You're not doing this. And so they go on a pursuit. During that pursuit, a shot rings out. The officer calls it out over the radio. He says a shot fired from the door. All right. Now all the other officers hear that. Now they're all thinking, okay, there's a weapon involved now. So that calls for a different awareness. All right. When they stop him, Mike, he slows down, but he doesn't still come to a complete stop. He gets out the passenger side door and takes off running with the ski mask on. All right. Now, the simple question is, well, why didn't he just stop? Well, we don't know, and we will never know. Right, Mike?
Right. And I want to back up a little bit because what I don't know, also what I didn't see a lot of is apparently he had fled from officers in a car chase. It was either the night before or the week before. Was it the day before? So they had his license plate and everything because he had fought, but he had gotten away at that time. Either they canceled the pursuit or for whatever reason. Go ahead, Corey.
They said they canceled it because it was in another county. So, counties got their jurisdiction. So he crossed over into Akron and they had to cancel the pursuit.
Okay. So he got away on that one. So they had a heads up who they were probably dealing with once they gave that plate over the air, and dispatch probably came back and said, yeah, this vehicle was involved in a pursuit yesterday that ended up where he got away. So like you say, we don't know why he was stopped other than a traffic violation, but I wonder also, did he have this ski mask on when he was stopped originally? I don't know, which definitely obviously would raise some kind of red flags. But at any rate, he got into a chase. All right, got into a pursuit. People, do you believe he popped around out the window? Yeah, I believe he popped around out the window. You know what I'm saying? During that pursuit.
Well, they do have it on camera.
Yeah, they have the flash of something from his window on that camera. I understand that. And I do believe that he did fire a round out of that window. But normally, when, like you said, Corey, when you call a pursuit, you got every other officer now knowing you are in a pursuit. Now, when I was an officer, if I was involved in a pursuit, it was no more than 2 vehicles per department policy that should be involved in a pursuit. The only other third vehicle that was possible to be involved in a pursuit would have been a supervisor's vehicle. But in general rule, it was no more than 2 vehicles involved in the pursuit. That was where I came from. Now, I understand it might not be the same across country. I'm not sure what that policy is in Ohio for this particular department. But while you had 8 officers chasing this guy, but at any rate, that's what you had. Now, once he stopped, he's already shown a propensity for violence. He's already shown that he might shoot the officers if given the opportunity. That's by him, number 1, being on the chase. Number 2, firing out a window during the pursuit. So he had already fired at these officers at least once, right? So when he jumped out the car, we don't know if the officers, if I was the officer at that point, I wouldn't know if he had a gun on him still or not. I wouldn't have known if he had left the gun in the car. All I would have known while I was chasing him is that he already took a shot at me once. You see what I'm saying? So I'm thinking he very well could still have that gun on him, and very well, as he's running from me, could turn around and pop a round off me at any time. You see what I'm saying? So I'm running with my pistol drawn. That's normal. You see what I'm saying? Ready to fire just in case that split second happens where he does turn around and make some kind of gesture or points a weapon at me or something like that. Then I'm firing. You know. Now, that being said, all that being said, yeah, we could go back and easily say if he would have followed the C.A.L.M acronym, this would have never happened. Obviously, you see what I'm saying? But he didn't. He took off and ran. And everybody wants to know that the big headline is why so many shots, number one. And some people even ask, why shoot at all? We're talking about a traffic violation here. But remember, folks, what Corey just said, I might have originally tried to stop you for a simple traffic violation, but once you took off from me, you turned it into something else. It's no longer just a traffic violation. You see what I'm saying? So ultimately, he didn't get shot because of a traffic violation. You see what I'm saying? He got shot because he created a circumstance that was much more elevated than just a simple traffic stop. You see what I'm saying? Like you say, Corey, we'll never know.
Right.
Yeah, we'll never know why he decided to take these police on a high-speed chase. We'll never know why he decided to pop around off as he's fleeing in a car. We'll never know why he had a ski mask on. We don't know that. I mean, you could look at red flags as an officer and say, well, if he got a ski mask on and he was armed at least at one point, did he just commit a robbery or something that we don't know about?
Right.
You know, that would be my first instinct, because ultimately, as I'm chasing him, I don't know what he did yet. But I certainly suspect he did something serious, because number one, he was armed at some point, and he had a ski mask on when he jumped out the car, and he jumped out the car on the passenger side, which means you didn't even park the car. You clearly trying to, get away. But we all know, and we all know running away from you could easily turn around and pop one off at me, and I take one in the neck and I'm dead. You see what I'm saying? But
and keep in mind they didn't know he was still armed. They know it's shot. So you had to as an officer, I have to still operate under the assumption that he is armed.
Yes, absolutely. I don't, like you say, I if I'm chasing you as an officer and I see that you already took a shot out your window, I'm going to assume you still armed as if I'm chasing you. You see what I'm saying? That's an assumption right there. The other aspect is you got 8 officers, and everybody wants to know why so many rounds. And you know what, Corey? I think about this, and I've watched this point in this video a lot, from what you can tell. 80, 90 shots, that's a lot of rounds. But when you look at it this way, as a single officer, we've done obviously range training as officers and quick draw. And when you see a threat, you fire your round. If I'm perceived with a threat or what I think is some kind of deadly threat towards me or my fellow officers or anyone else, I can pop off 10 rounds easily in that handgun if my adrenaline is going, and I perceive it. Once I perceive it, once I start pulling that trigger, I'm not stopping until that threat is gone, and I can get off guaranteed 10 rounds in a matter of a second, 2 seconds before I determine the threat is no longer there. But here's where I have the problem. Go ahead, Corey.
Now, I was just gonna say, now you're right. 90 shots fired, 60 hits. So if you did the math, you're talking about 11.2 rounds, I think it is, per officer that shot. And like you said, 8 of them. Well, yeah, that's a lot of rounds. But like you said, you can easily get 10 rounds off real quick before you know it.
True.
You know,
Now we
as
don't
fast
know
as
yet,
safety
though.
goes.
We don't know yet what these officers saw that made them decide to use deadly force, because they used the taser twice initially when they started to chase. You see what I'm saying? And then at some point, I'm going now. Let me play devil's advocate here. You see what I'm saying? If they decided to use a taser in the beginning of the chase, that tells me that this was not a deadly threat at that moment. They decided to use that taser, or at least in their minds, they thought that this was not a deadly threat at the moment that they decided to use these tasers. Okay. Obviously, we both know you ain't going to use a taser against a deadly threat. You're going to use the firearm. So, at what point in this chase did they determine that now this is no longer a taser type issue, a non-lethal threat, but this now becomes a deadly threat? At what point did they determine that? Number one, that's my question. And number two, you got 8 officers there. All 8 officers, from what I understand, fired rounds at this target, this suspect, Mr. Jayland Walker, right? And most of those rounds hit their target. So that tells me that they could see clearly what they were shooting at. Okay. And they were aiming pretty good because most of them rounds hitting, right? So that tells me that you mean to tell me all 8 of these officers perceived the same threat at the same moment and decided to fire their weapon at the same time. That does give me personally some doubt. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't know how you feel about that, Corey, but it does give me personally some doubt that all 8 of these officers perceived the same deadly threat at the same time and decided to shoot. I mean, if you're the guy in the back of the pack and you chasing, okay, well, you might have some crossfire issues if you decide to shoot and you further away from the guy in the front of the pack. Okay, so you may not see exactly what the guy in the front of the pack sees. Now,
Okay,
I understand.
All right.
Go ahead, Corey. Go ahead. Respond to
Okay. All right. So
that.
now what you have to do, you need to slow that video down, and they were kind of like in a half circle shape when it was all said. And for me, what got me was, which I was thinking, like, you know what, I probably would have shot too, because when you slow it down, when you listen to the sounds of the shooting, they all shot simultaneously. And you know, in our training, Mike, we know that because we seen something. You and I seen something that, based on our training, provoked us to fire. So when you slow it down and you listen to the sounds of the shooting, this is why we say you can't always rush your judgment. You have to stop and look at things. For me, when I slowed it down, I listened to the shots, like, oh, hold on, man. They all shot at the same time. So it's not like one shot and then the next shot, and then it all went bang, 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 bang at the same time. Like we were at the firing range, and the range master said fire, and everybody, that's what it sounded like. So when I looked at, and then you look at him when he's running, when that happened, he turned around back towards him. Now, I've been in situations, and I'm sure you've been in situations where you pulled your weapon out. And I was just sharing with my wife yesterday. It was my incident. I had about not even 5 minutes from our house when I had gotten to an incident when I almost shot a guy. Same thing. If I'd have shot him, I probably would have been justified. Well, I know I would have been justified in it, because the way he was when he got out that car and started turning towards me, I could not see his hands. So as an officer, when you make a certain gesture like that, like you have something, and you go and you making that gesture, how long does that officer wait? Does he wait till you get your weapon up to shoot at you? You make that gesture like
Well,
you had something, you getting ready to do some harm. I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna shoot. So
and I
based
understand that.
on that training, based on that training and what I see here, I'm under the assumption that that's what triggered them because it was all
And
simultaneously. Go ahead, Mike.
no. As an officer, I understand that training. I understand that thought process. I understand that kind of reaction to emotion. But let me clarify for our citizens who don't realize this. Uh, we don't have to actually wait for you to shoot at us before we shoot at you. We don't have to actually wait until you
Correct.
necessarily until you raise your handgun up and point it directly at us before we can perceive a threat and decide to act on it. You see what I'm saying? People need to understand that. I don't have to wait for you to shoot me. Like you said, by the time you got that gun to my dome, it's too late. I'm not going to have time to
Right.
respond and get you before you get me. Okay. Now, in this case, he didn't have a gun, okay, on him, on his person at when this took place. So that tells me, like you said, either when whatever motion he made that made them think he was getting ready to use deadly force on them made them think that, okay, I gotta shoot. Either that happened, okay, or what I'm hoping that didn't happen is what we call sympathetic fire. You got one or two officers perceiving something, shooting, and then you got all the rest of them shooting because they hear two officers taking those shots. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like that's not possible. You see what I'm saying? But as an officer, we all know what sympathetic fire is. We all been trained that you better not be firing your weapon because you heard another officer fire it. We all know that when you go to court, you better be able to justify why you took that shot, period. Okay.
Why you took
And
that
it
shot?
ain't going to be enough to say, oh, I heard my partner. My partner started shooting at him. So I started shooting at him. Oh, no. That ain't going to cut it. You better have an
I would
articulate.
say this though, Mike.
Go ahead.
I would say this. You're right. You as officers, you know the difference. I watched a video yesterday of another shooting in West Virginia, uh, Beckley, West Virginia. Police officer shot a armed white man, white police officers, shot and killed him. Shot him multiple times up on the highway.
Mhm.
Uh, of course, it's not going to get the news because he was white and the officers were white. Doesn't fit the motive. But you could tell that sympathy shooting in that video because the one officer shot, and then it was like a 4-second pause, and then the other 2 or 3 officers shot. Here, it's not that. I mean, you can't hear it. I mean, because I ran that video over and over and over. I said, okay, who shot first? Is there a delay? It was simultaneous. It was all at an instance here. So again, for
Okay.
me, and again, this is why Mike and I do these videos because you're going to get different takes on this. Uh, when you get to court, like Mike was saying, yeah, you better very well be able to articulate why you shot. Every officer's got to articulate for themselves why he or she shot. Corey Taylor, why did you shoot? Well, this is what I saw, Your Honor. This is why I shot. And you better be able to account for every one of your rounds. All right. So in today's time, Mike, and how things play out, uh, you don't want to be able to have to second guess yourself in these type of situations because at the end of the day, you as the officer want to go home too. I have to operate under the assumption that he still has a weapon on him, right? Because the car is still moving. I think it finally came to a rest. I don't know if it hit a tree or whatever, but the vehicle finally came to a rest. But he gets out. I can only assume that he still has that on him. Now, you go and make an adjuster to act as if you had a weapon, then I'm going to still perceive that you had that weapon, and I'm going to take action.
Okay. It definitely sounds logical how you say, especially since listening to the video. And keep in mind, this shooting lasted for 7 seconds. It was 7 seconds. Okay, very quick. 7 seconds is not a long time in the bigger scheme of perceiving a threat, responding to that threat, meaning by the time you decide to pull that trigger, and by the time you decide to stop pulling that trigger, you have to, number one, perceive the threat. Number two, respond to the threat. Number three, determine that threat no longer exists. And then number four, stop pulling the trigger. Okay. So there's a time frame in that when you go through that. When you do training like that, there's a time frame when you go through that. Okay. It takes a couple seconds, 2-3 seconds. And forgive me, there's a scientific method to that. And it specifically says, and I apologize, I'm not prepared to elaborate on it right now, but the next show I'll be ready. But anyway, there's a scientific method to that time frame of what I just explained. But by the time you perceive the threat, respond to the threat, determine that threat is no longer existing, and then you stop shooting. Okay. It takes a moment for all that to happen, which might explain why you still heard shooting when he was already on the ground. You see what I'm saying? That might explain that. And people, I think, will have a hard time grasping the 8 officers all perceiving the same thing at the same time and shooting. Okay. The amount of bullets makes it sound like a lot. Okay. And it is a lot. But you also got to figure it's 8 officers who supposedly perceived the threat. They better have, because if they didn't, well, that's going to be on that individual officer who fired that. That's going to be on him. That's going to be his ass. You see what I'm saying? Let me address some comments we got here. First off, BCV Book Chapter Verse Podcast. He had made a comment about ski mask on at night in the summertime. That's definitely not easy. Something that that's a red flag, in other words. And he also says he's sorry, but he doesn't pity fools who resist, run, and shoot at police. Now, as a citizen, I definitely understand what you're saying, BCV. Yeah, if you a suspect, you created this whole situation, like we always say on this show, Corey, you don't know what kind of officer you're going to get. You don't know what that officer is going to perceive, or how or why he is going to perceive you as a threat. So yes, of course, you never want to create a circumstance that is elevated more than what it should be. I'm going to say the things that people don't want to hear. Okay. Jayland Walker obviously created this circumstance. He created the dangerousness in this circumstance. All the decisions he made were wrong. Obviously, people don't want to hear that, but it is the truth. And so therefore you can definitely say that he certainly contributed to what happened to him. Now, that being said, though, okay, that doesn't let officers off the hook. Okay, if they did something wrong, it doesn't. If they did something wrong, it doesn't let them off the hook, because you still, as an officer, I'm thinking, is my actions justifiable? Period. You know what I'm saying? Because when I go to court, it's going to be my ass on the line if my actions were not justifiable. If the people in that court don't think my actions were justifiable, and I cannot articulate why I decided to pull that trigger, that's going to be my ass. You see what I'm saying? So as an officer, Corey and I, again, we still want to look at this situation as kind of like mistake, no mistake. We're not looking at it from an emotional perspective. You understand what I'm saying? We're looking at it from...
You got to leave emotion out of it.
You got to leave emotions out of it. We're looking at it from a technical perspective, from a reasonable officer's perspective. So that's why we're breaking all this down, so that you can get our thoughts on each element of this stop, each element of this incident. Now, Corey, and
So
you and I, go ahead, Corey.
now I was gonna read what Jesus loves you say. He says so. He wonders why he just didn't take the traffic violation and go about his business. Did he have any warrants for his arrest? No, we aren't aware of any warrants for his arrest. But what I did find interesting is that I believe a week or so prior to this, maybe a couple weeks, he lost his fiance. I think she passed away. So that raised the question of why he got to pursuit with the police the day before for another traffic violation. Was he trying? Now this is just all speculation. This isn't factual what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to make sense of it because Mr. Walker is no longer here for us to hear his explanation why he did it. You know, could this possibly have been a suicide by a cop? He did all the right things. He knew what he could do to to provoke the police into doing something. All right. He ends up getting his life taken. He probably knows his family's going to end up suing the department and they'll be taken care of financially. I don't know. It's speculation. I'm speculating because I have to ask these questions. Okay, why would not a reasonable person, if you never did nothing wrong, you only had one other citation your whole life, why would you not stop? To me, that's not reasonable. You're not being reasonable when you pursue lead the police on a pursuit like that. If you didn't do nothing wrong, why didn't you stop? Just take that ticket and go on about your business. Like Jesus love you said. Uh, now again, like you just said, Mike, his actions caused the police to have to and I can pretty much guarantee you these officers are heartbroken themselves because you don't want to get into a situation like that, especially in today's time and the way this country is with racial tensions and everything right now. As a black man, I really would hate to be a white police officer, to be honest with you. I don't know if I
Yeah,
can
I agree.
effectively do my job. You know what I'm saying? Because of the tension that's out here. So as a white police officer, you better be damn well 100% unequivocally being able to articulate why you pulling your weapon out and shoot. Otherwise, you're gonna be labeled as a racist. Doesn't even matter what the subject did. It's just a simple fact now in today's time. You're a white police officer shooting a black man. You're racist,
No, I
and
understand
this is what.
I understand where you're coming from on that. And I agree. I agree with you. These times, this it's hard to be a police officer, period. But in these times, it's especially difficult for a white police officer. If you out there, if you're a good white police officer, if you're a good police officer and you happen to be white, it's a difficult time for you to be policing in this country right now. You see what I'm saying? When it comes to incidents involving black people, I'll agree with that. However, putting that aside, in this particular situation, we are just looking at technical aspects of what a reasonable officer would do and things like that. I think there's still some questions that I have without knowing the individual statements from these officers involved. You see what I'm saying? And like I say, they at some point it'll come out when this most certainly will go to court. You see what I'm saying? And it'd be interesting to see if any of these officers get criminally charged with some kind of negligence. The amount of bullets, although you can easily say, man, that sounds extreme. 90 shots and however, 60 of them actually hit him. Hit. I mean, that's a lot of
Allegedly,
firing.
yeah.
Right.
That's a lot of
That's a
fire.
lot of firing from 8 officers. But when it's 8 officers, I can easily see that. But like you said, Corey, it was such a short period that they all fired at the same time. You see what I'm saying? Either, like you said, they all saw the same thing at that moment or something else. I don't know. Okay. Now he had a gun in the car. They said they found a gun with a loaded magazine in the car. Okay, that was in the back seat, from what I understand, or at least that's where it was in one place, but it was recovered in a second place. I don't know if the officers found the gun and decided to, unload it and move it to where to take a picture of it. That's very possible.
That's correct.
That's which, in my opinion, you should have, wherever you saw that gun in that car, you should have taken a photo just as it was when you saw it in that car. I would have unloaded that gun if that's what they did. I don't know if that's what they did or not. But I'm saying I wouldn't have unloaded that gun. I would not have taken a magazine out of that gun. I would have kept that gun and photographed that gun exactly where I saw it at the moment I saw it. You see what I'm saying? And exactly the condition that it was in. Okay. Because it would help, even though there was a flash shown out the window, it would help if a lab could find that, examine that gun to determine if a shot was fired. You see what I'm saying?
Apparently they did find a casing.
They found a casing, so they can say that there's a spent casing in the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I think they found it back at the scene where the shot rang out.
I see.
That's what I read in one article. Megan said, and this is why this video and all the videos need to be shared so that these types of things don't happen in our communities and need to be educated. And that's the whole point, Megan, is why we do the show, because we have to educate everyone how we are to interact with law enforcement. This is why the C.A.L.M acronym is so important. Comply, answer questions, listen, and move on. Like I mean, there's a lot of, it's hard to tell when you're in a pursuit like this that the officers knew what his mental state was. They had no idea. I'm sure that, his fiance died a couple weeks back, and that he was having a hard time, coping with that. As an officer, and when I got it, and I've been in a lot of pursuits. I've been in a lot of pursuits. That's one thing, be honest with you, I'm not thinking about. I'm thinking, was a crime committed? I'm thinking about, what are my actions going to be when I get that car stopped? How fast can I get that car stopped? Those are the type of things I'm thinking about. Whether or not the individual is armed, I'm thinking about that. So, I mean, I don't think that individual's mental health was a factor on these officers' minds at that time. But it is something that we need to talk about. We need to ensure our youth understand what they need to do when they have an encounter with law enforcement. It's not to run. That's the last thing you want to do is run.
But you know what,
said,
Corey?
Mike, now we got to start asking. Now we got to start asking the who, what, where, why questions. Why are you?
But you know what? You do have citizens who will say, that's all you got is don't run. You see what I'm saying? Should you lose your life because you ran? You see what I'm saying? That's you do have citizens that will say that. And that's really difficult, because you think that just running alone, you shouldn't determine someone as a deadly threat just because they ran away. Now, obviously, you and I both know that are there circumstances where someone is running away where you would clearly be justified by shooting them? Absolutely. You see what I'm saying? Just because you're running away doesn't mean you no longer are a deadly threat to anybody. If you have been shooting someone, if you are armed and you running into a school, I might shoot you before you get into that school, because I don't want you to go in that school with kids and take hostage or shoot somebody else. If you a domestic violence suspect that we're dealing with and you try to run back into the house to take care of your spouse or something, I might shoot you because I don't want you to get back into that house and beat the mess out of your spouse and or kill your spouse. Okay. We can all show circumstances where shooting someone as they're running away could be justified. And I think a lot of citizens don't understand that. But in this situation, he decided to run away. Is that enough to for him to lose his life, you know what? I'll say to that is that running away alone doesn't necessarily justify you losing your life. But when you couple that with, number one, I had been in a high-speed pursuit with these officers, barely stopped my car, jumped out my car, took a shot at officers as I'm driving away, okay? Had a ski mask on when I jumped out the car, okay? And I'm running away, yeah. But what did I, as an officer, I'm thinking, what did this guy just do? Number one, to be popping rounds off at me, to have a ski mask on. Did he just commit some violent robbery here or what? You see what I'm saying? And do I have a reason to think that if you run away, once you turn around and make some kind of gesture, are you going to shoot me? Yeah, a reasonable officer could think that. Okay, they could think that and decide to shoot you because of the emotion that you made when you turned around. You see what I'm saying? But we know all of that is going to have to be argued in court. All of that is going to have to be articulated in court. And the court of public, regardless of the court of public opinion, okay, the formal courts will have to decide whether or not what these officers did was reasonable. And if whatever they decide, I hope that everybody accepts it. And if it turns out that these officers were guilty of something or proven to be excessive
back
in
up
what
for a
they
second,
did,
Mike.
I'm fine with that.
Back up a second. So we're talking about when they shot, right? So
yeah,
they didn't shoot him while he was in the car, right? They didn't shoot him as he was exiting the car, did they?
No. Matter of fact, they used the taser.
No,
you know.
Right. They shot 2 tasers at him. They didn't shoot him as he was started running.
True.
And like
I know where you're going. I'm gonna continue to let you get there.
It wasn't until he made, like you just said a second ago, he made that gesture. And like you said, you see in the video, you see him make that turn, right? I'm going to be under the presumption that he still has a weapon. We haven't searched the car. So I as an officer, I have to assume that you still got that weapon on you. You turn on me as you run. As long as he's running, I think he's going to be fine. Because if they're going to shoot him, they'd have shot him back in the car. If you want to go about it like that. But they didn't shoot him in the car. He got out the car. They didn't shoot him.
Good points.
He started running. He was running for a little bit. And then it wasn't until he made that gesture. And then they all shot at the same time. So, yeah, you have to assume that they all saw something that, based on their training, they reacted in that manner.
I can understand that. I can understand that. And I hope that is, in fact, what happened.
Mike, I hope so, too. But it's sad because what if it was suicide by cop?
That
right.
I mean you make a good point.
Could they have still? I think this. I don't, as officers, folks, an officer hates to be put into a situation like that. You know, as many times as I drew my weapon out, I always said to myself, Lord, please don't let me shoot. Please don't let me shoot. I didn't want to have to shoot. And I thank God in my time there with the department, I never shot anybody. Or I pulled my weapon out a lot of times, and came very doggone close to pulling that trigger a lot. Right. But again, I think based on training, there's one situation. I think I still think why didn't I shoot? Right? Why didn't I shoot? And I thank God still to this day that he didn't have a gun. You know what he had in his hand? He had a 6-pack of beer, Mike. He had a 6-pack of beer in his hands. And could you just imagine that headline? Virginia State Trooper shoots an unarmed black man. No, it wouldn't have been good.
No matter what, it wouldn't have been good all around.
It wouldn't have been good. And, you know, I ask myself all the time, well, why ain't you shoot? why didn't you shoot? Right? I had to. There was no question. I could have shot him because I couldn't. He wouldn't show me his hands. He wasn't listening to my commands, and he hit his hands, and he was making that motion of turning towards me. And then as he turned, I see the 6-pack of beer in his hands.
Yeah.
And I didn't
well,
shoot.
you know,
And I tell you, like I told my wife, I got, like I told my wife, I pissed and shit in my pants.
just an example of how
Not
you gotta
literally,
make
but
that
you know,
perception. You got to perceive whether that's a threat or not in such a quick time. You see what I'm saying? You know, I too, obviously, if you have if you was a police officer in any period of time in this job, you're gonna pull your gun out a lot of times. There's gonna be a lot of times where you gonna have an incident where you gonna at least have to pull your gun out. You see what I'm saying? You ain't gonna get around that. Okay. And God willing, you will never have to shoot it. You see what I'm saying? What do they say? I don't know if they say this today, but they say what 95% of officers or more go through a whole career without ever having to shoot someone. You see what I'm saying? And fortunately, in my career, I've never had to shoot someone. Pull your gun out, that's fine. Never had to actually pull that trigger on someone. And I'm glad with that. You know, I remember when I was fairly new cop, we had a guy and we responded to his house. Young guy was in his house with a big shard of glass. We were dealing with him. He was having some emotional issues, some kind of stuff going on with him. And he had a big big old shard of glass while we were confronting him. Well, of course, we drew down on him. You see what I'm saying? And another officer got on scene, and we had stun guns before we had tasers back then. This was way long time ago. You don't see that anymore. But he was able to get at him at a different angle without him realizing it and stunned him, and was able to make that scene a little bit safer without him having that glass. We were able to take him down. But that was, you know, it wouldn't have taken much to decide that, I got to shoot this guy. You see what I'm saying? Fortunately, it didn't happen that way. But in this situation, I mean, you know, like I say, a lot of people will look at the number of bullets fired and the fact that they kept firing when he was already on the ground. But remember, folks, it takes a moment to, number one, perceive the threat, fire your weapon, determine that threat no longer exists, and then stop pulling that trigger. You see what I'm saying? It takes a moment to do that. You know, do I think they were 8 officers shooting them at the same time? You could also look, you know, Corey, I play devil's advocate all the time. You can also look at that as, man, wow, all 8 of these officers at one time perceived something that at the same time decided to shoot at the same time. But like you explained, Corey, that's as if they all saw him do something instantly that made them think that way. They didn't shoot him as he was running away initially. They didn't shoot him at any point, even while he was in the car and had already taken a shot at them. They didn't shoot him then. Matter of fact, when he first got out the car, they tried to tase him a couple of times. So something changed. I agree with you with that thought process that something changed from the time when he turned around at that moment that all made them look and perceive a threat. Now, I'm waiting to hear and see what that is. We're speculating when we say they saw a threat, obviously, but I'm waiting to hear what these officers say they saw that caused them to fire. That's all. You know? So, folks, I appreciate you guys joining us. I know this is a lot to talk about. I love the comment.
I think we're good.
Tone says, sounds like fire ants reaction. You know what, Tone? It could be, or maybe not. Maybe not. You see what I'm saying? That's yet to be determined. Now, we can only tell you reasonably how it could have went down, but, you know, factually, we haven't heard from these officers what they say they perceive. You know what I'm saying?
I like EAE's comment. He says, I love NWA and the lyrics of F the police as much as the next man, but it's just entertainment. These stupid kids are taking it literally and losing their lives for it exactly. Like I said, I don't, it's sad that the young man lost his life. You know, 60 shots is a lot when you think it on a grander scale. Uh, but really, honestly, Mike, I mean, when you got there, I mean, that goes to show you the officer's training, because I guarantee if you and I are there and we saw that same thing, you and I probably would have shot too.
Yeah, if I would have saw
That,
something that sounded looked like he was making a gesture to turn around and shoot me,
yeah,
yeah, I could see him.
yeah,
I would have shot. I would have shot.
based on what we know and our training, because when you're in situation like this is what you want to kick in. You want your training to kick in. You want that officer survival skill set to kick in. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you want that officer to go home. So based on it, officers are trained a certain way, so they're all going to react. I expect all the officers to react in the same manner. And if one's doing a wild wild west justice that's not even in the department policy, or in accordance with the rule of the law or the letter of the law, yeah, that one's going to stand out. That one's going to stand out, and we'll be able to handle it. This one here, for me, sits just a little bit different, because if it was just a racial thing, and if it was just, oh, we're going to just go ahead and gun down another black, well, they had plenty of opportunities to do it up to this point when they did shoot. So I had to look at it a little thinner. This is a little closer, I should say. And this is why we say, hey, wait, let's just wait. Uh, you know, I don't think these body cams footage did any real justice in it, because they're all from when the officers were running. I
Yeah,
like to
and then
see
they're
one
still
officer who
not
might have been in the back
100.
somewhere who didn't run, and you're able to see that whole video at a standstill.
That
Go
would have
ahead,
been
Mike.
nice. No, that would have been nice, and that does make it difficult. As much as I love body cameras, you know what I'm saying. As much as I love, um, if you running, it's going to be shaky, and they're not always the best quality cameras either. You see what I'm saying? So I wish there
Hmm.
was an angle or some look. This would have been a time where it would have been great for somebody to have cell phone footage standing where they ended up shooting that, but you don't have that in this situation, and it is what it is. It's a situation that I would never want to be in as a police officer. Yeah, these officers are going to have to go through it, and it's going to have to be determined whether their force was excessive or not. You see what I'm saying? It's going to have to be determined that way. So it's kind of hard
So
we can give you opinions of what a reasonable officer would do in this type of situation, or what they might or might not perceive as a threat, like we've done. But it remains to be seen what these officers saw that made them shoot. We'll find that out.
So EAE says, we get these last two comments here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up, Mike. So EAE says, I
Okay.
think it's racial, but not in a hateful way the media portrays these things. It's racial because these white cops are more paranoid around young black males than, say, an Asian woman. I'm going to have to agree to disagree on that, because I'm gonna tell you, 99.9% of the times when I pulled my weapon out on somebody, it was on a black person. Um, because I don't know why, it just seemed like the ones I encountered always wanted to try me, or to really push me to do something. An Asian woman, yeah, even if it's an older black woman or older black male, uh, my heightened alertness is not going to be as high as if I'm with a 20 something year old black male. But I know that the old lady or the old man, no matter what color they are, nine times they're not going to do anything to you. They're going to be compliant. But it was the younger people uh, who would try to give me a harder time. And it was crazy. I was like, man, why does it seem like if I had to draw my service weapon, it was usually on a black person, a young black male between the ages of 18 to 33. I think he was 34. It forced me to have to draw my weapon. I don't know. What say you, Mike?
Well, I can't say that every time I had to draw my weapon, it was somebody that was black. I can't say that. So I'm not going to, for me.
Well, I can only say that because where I worked.
I understand that. I understand that in the community that you worked or where you work, I can understand that if the community was 90% black, then obviously 90% of the contacts you have are going to be that color. Same way with me. I actually worked in a community where it was mostly white folks. You see what I'm saying? As far as the community makeup goes, most of my contacts in the community, whether good or bad, were white folks. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Not that I haven't had bad contacts with black people. You know what I'm saying? I certainly have. But I'm saying in overall, the bigger picture, if I look at the span of my career as a patrol officer, most of my contacts have been with white people. You see what I'm saying? That's a tough one. That's a tough question.
How compliant were they, Mike? How compliant were they?
It was probably 50-50. I'll be honest. Most contacts I've had, especially if I had my gun drawn or something, they were compliant to the point where I didn't have to shoot anybody. You see what I'm saying? Definitely had to go hands-on plenty of times. You know what I'm saying? But luckily never had to shoot anybody. Never had that kind of threat that I perceived that I had to pull that trigger. You see what I'm saying? So that's a tough one. I want to be careful when because I'm not saying that all black folks always want to fight with the cops. This ain't that kind of show, so I'm not gonna get into that. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's not that kind of show, but I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat what my experience.
I understand. No, I understand that. That was your experience.
I don't think that's fair to our audience. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that. That's the bulk of it. I mean, it's obviously everybody's different everywhere. Everybody has different types of personalities where they're from, and I can honestly tell you, I don't know what it's like pulling over an Asian person because I don't think I ever pulled maybe one Asian person in my time, because there's not a lot of Asian people here. So the bulk of, depending on what, and I work 3 cities as a state cop. I work 3 cities. We have one in the city that's a predominantly black city, and the others are pretty well diverse. But the majority of the folks there are black or white. So, and you may occasionally get a Hispanic every now and again. But the majority of people you're gonna pull over are white or black. And again, if you work in the one city that's heavily populated with blacks, you're gonna pull a lot of blacks over.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's just here and some of the areas, some parts of the interstate I worked were heavy, where they like to push their drugs through and use that route, that stretch of the highway to move their drugs. So you get in, you stop them. I mean, the drugs and guns all day. So I'm not gonna sit here and lie.
I understand your point. No, I understand your point. I guess that would be a point I would want to make too. Is that it depends on where you work. It depends on what the community makeup is where you work, and it depends on the where in that community. You got some communities where you have an area that is like out in California, you got all kind of different races, very diverse out here in California. But you have areas of the community that might be majority Hispanic, or you might have areas that might be, like you say, majority black. Well, clearly, all your contacts for that in the community that you work in is going to be made up of that race wherever you working. You see what I'm saying? So I understand. I know we're getting off on a tangent there, but you know, in this case, folks, like we were saying, you know, this shooting, I know it raised a lot of questions from a lot of citizens, and I'm hopefully we were able to at least give you unbiased, as far as at least as far as race goes, an unbiased view of what we perceive happened here or not. You see what I'm saying? So thanks for joining us, y'all.
Yeah, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It's your first time checking us out this evening. Get this out to everyone. Let's stay calm. Let's continue to wait and share that acronym CALM with everyone. Comply, answer questions, listen, move on, because that is key. Whether you want to realize or not, I think that's key, because we're taking this. We're taking this because based on our experience and things that we like to see happen on traffic stops as LEO. I want you to be calm. I want you to listen to what I'm telling you. I'm giving you some valuable information to help you through this situation, because some people have never been stopped before. So let's share this out. Let's continue this conversation. Mike and I do a show every Thursday at 8 o'clock. So chime in next week. Share this out. We hope you all had a happy and enjoyable 4th of July. I did. I think I ate a little bit too much. And we will see y'all next week. God bless you.
Peace out.
Peace.
I see your comment, EA.